Hello everybody, this is the Painting Pigeon, and today I'm going to show you how I paint a budgie. Now sometimes I'm not the best at explaining things, but I will try. I'm going to explain what I use and what colors I choose, stuff like that. So here are some of the acrylics that I'm going to use for this piece. They're all fairly cheap, nothing expensive. I got them on sale at Hobby Lobby, and I try to use the heavier acrylic. I don't like to use the runny, watery stuff. It tends to crack. So here I'm going to be doing an outline. I just sketch it in, just get the basic shapes in. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like to use colored pencil. You can use like chalk or anything that doesn't run, when you add acrylic over it, because sometimes when you use like Sharpie or pen, the ink might not be completely dry, and then you go over it with acrylic and it blends it and it makes it all gray and weird looking. So anyway, here's just sketching out the budgie. Now I kind of do it very loose. I paint loosely, so it's not going to be super tight or super detailed. I like to have fun with it and just kind of glob on the paint fairly thick, and you'll see what I mean. Just make sure that I get the all the little important details that for sure have to be on him. Like say if I were painting this for someone, if this was someone's pet, I would have to make sure that the important features are there, like that little blue on his cheek or the little black spots. They have to be present in as corrective a place as it can be. So there's a brush that I just showed. It's a large flat brush. Well, fairly large. It's not too big. I'm going to be using kind of orangey red for the background. Now, I started off using that as a base, kind of, and I'm going to mix a lighter skin tone peachy color into it to make it kind of like a pinkish orange background, almost like a sunset kind of color. I'm not entirely sure. I just kind of came up with it on the spot. So obviously I'm not going to be doing the background that's in the picture. If you want to just do a plain background, you can. I like to do a lot of sunset or like moonlight themes, or like lots of flowers and things. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just do the budgie or the main subject. But I like to have fun with it. So I added some bright orange over that to just kind of give it like a sunset glow. I left the outside part, or the outline of the canvas, blank, because I am going to be filling in a bunch of leaves and bushes and things towards the end. So I leave space for that just so I don't waste the paint. Technically I could cover the whole thing with orange, but I don't want to. So here I am filling in just the basic color of the budgie, and I used a mixture of like a periwinkle blue and a very dark blue. I don't know the names of any of my paints. I just kind of paint with the color I see. This is not a professional thing. So any kind of dark blue and like a periwinkle color would work. So here I'm adding the base color to his face. Now, because it is white, I don't want to start off with white. And some people like to start off with gray, but I don't like to do that either, because it's not, I don't know, it ends up being kind of dull. So I use like a lavender purpley color that I mixed out of white and violet, and I'll add in blue, and I'll add in all the colors. When I paint, I like to add kind of as many colors as I can into everything. I don't know why, but it has an interesting effect, and it does something kind of cool with the shadows. But you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm kind of adding the basic shadow color to him, which I used a dark blue and a purple mixture. And so that's going to be in the middle of his belly for now. This is not going to be where it stays. It's just kind of like to remind me that's where I need to put it. So there's like a smaller little pointier brush that I'm going to use. Don't know the names to any of these. Don't know the numbers, but that's generally what it looks like. I'm not too specific with the colors or the brushes that I use. Just anything that gets the job done or anything that looks like it'll get the job done. So there's a light blue and I think peach mixture, and then I'm adding peach on top, like on his forehead. And I'm trying to get the fluffiness out because I think maybe I didn't give him enough fluff when I was doing my sketch, and I'm just kind of filling in the color over the purple that I put on just to kind of lighten it for now. I just kind of build all the layers there with the paint. So there's some violet. I'm just kind of establishing where the shadows are going to be. Now in the reference, there's not really shadows there, right? On that side of his face, there's not really very much shadow. But in my picture, he's in a completely different place. He's on some tropical island someplace. So, and maybe the sunset is coming from like, I don't know, the top right area, something. So the other side of his face is going to have a shadow. I don't know. That's what I thought looked good, so that's what I did. So there I'm trying to kind of layer in his feathers. I did bring some white in there, but it's not going to stay that way. So there's some more white on his cheeks. Now when I do my feathers, especially on parakeets like this, where you could see a lot of little feathers on their face, I tend to really stick on the paint really heavy so you can kind of like almost feel it, you know, like it's like a feather sticking off, right? It's like sticking off the canvas. When you see breaks like this, I'm wiping my brush or cleaning my brush or whatever. So I'm adding some light blue to the other side. Now it gets kind of tricky because when you add a blue like that to his white face, you have to make sure it's not going to be the same color as his body so it doesn't blend in because he does have a white face. So eventually I'm going to go in and make his body darker to make sure that there isn't any confusion there. Added some more peach to his cheeks there. And there's some darker blue that I'm adding in just to kind of make sure his face looks like it's separate, right? So it's like a separate color there. So there's some even darker blue. Sorry if I'm a little vague with the colors. I've never really paid attention. I just kind of look at it. So there I'm kind of putting a shape in for where his wing will be. I'm gonna do that last because it's a very small little feature. It can wait. So there's some white. That's what I'm talking about with the texture there. You just add in feathers. I don't know. You do little swipes there to put in the feathers, and there you have it. Looks kind of like feathers. So there's some really bright orange that I'm using for the beak. Now I'm going to come in and highlight that and give shadows and everything in a second. So there I think I'm using a dark blue and purple. I like to use purple for a lot of my shadows, purple and blue especially. I even outline a lot of my stuff in like a light blue or like some kind of shade of blue that works, and it makes it look like there's kind of an interesting shadow happening. There I am putting in his nose. I'm kind of using just whatever color was left on my brush. I just did an outline for his nose. I think in person it was almost like a weird green. So, but that goes away after you fill it in. So there I am putting on like a peach highlight on his beak. It's not white. Maybe in the video it seems kind of white, but it's not. So there I think I'm starting to add in a little bit of purple onto his beak. I think like a light purple. There's some more orange. So there is like a very light turquoise aqua color that I just put in. It just creates an interesting effect. I know it's not really there, but there is kind of like a light white color that is on that side of his beak. And instead of using white, I use a light blue, just to kind of show that there is a highlight, and maybe it's reflecting his other feathers, maybe it's reflecting something else. I don't know. I think it looks cool. So I just filled in his nose with a deep blue, and then I'm adding in the rest of his feathers. I don't necessarily have a process of how or like what I do when. I guess I just kind of focus on the face first after I have everything kind of after I have everything kind of planned out where it's going to be, and I focus on like the feet and the background at the very end. So there is some more fluff. I'm just using white, just adding it into his forehead. Now sometimes, like in this case, I think I added too much. It looks too light, so I'm gonna have to go back in later and add some more shadow to that. Maybe for the picture it looks, or for the reference photo it looks okay, but for me that's not enough contrast there. So I'm gonna go back to that later once it's more dry. That's another problem working with acrylics quickly, is it does dry fast, but not fast enough sometimes, especially if you like to work fast, because it's like I'll have to wait for stuff to dry, but I don't want to. I'm very impatient, so I'll try to like blend in a shadow or something, and then the white gets mixed into it and it ends up lighter, and that's I used to do a lot of oil painting, and I just stopped because it was just I would lose patience with it, because I would have to have layers dry first and then continue, and I would leave it and I just couldn't come back to it. So there I put in the eye. I think I used a dark blue base first for the eyeball, and then I added in a white highlight and some black, and there's some black little spots on his face. I try to get it as accurate as it is in the reference photo. Like I said, just in case this is for someone. If it's just for you, I mean, you can put him wherever you want on his face, I guess. So there's some little white and peach little highlights for his nose, and some light blue there. You'll see towards the end what I mean about the colors mixing together, and what I'll have to do sometimes is when I'm painting, I'll have like say I'm painting his foot, and then there is the background that's right behind his foot, and it's like I'll pick up some of the background color when I'm painting his foot in, and then it mixes, and then I have to wipe the brush and put on a fresh coat of paint, and then wipe it, and then more paint, and then wipe it. So it's just constant wiping. I'm very impatient. All right, so looks like I added some highlights to his nose there. His nose looks like it's almost done. So now I'm just adding some purple and peach, and I think I added some red and orange around his nose to kind of make it stand out a little bit. So there is a peach little highlight on the tip of his beak to kind of separate it from everything else. And later on I'm going to add a dark shadow around that as well. So there I'm using some red there just to kind of separate it, because to me it kind of makes sense to use red in this case, or maybe even like a dark orange, because everything else is so purple and blue that's like it's going to stand out. So here I'm coming in with the periwinkle. It's just to fill in that space where he has all his little lines on his face. Now budgies are kind of tricky to paint that have all the little lines, because they're so little and faint. It's hard to get them in correctly. Now I do it very loosely, so it kind of gives the effect like all the lines are there. Really, they're not. If I'm trying to be really accurate, I'll go in later with a very thin Sharpie after it's dry and just kind of draw them in. But here I'm just kind of gently filling them in with a dark blue, and I'm using a really thin brush for this. And again, I tried to have like a kind of darker underlying color, just so when I add the highlight on top, it'll stand out. It'll look like, I don't know, there's some kind of depth there. Maybe I'm not explaining it well. I'm not sure. I'm not a teacher. I'm just posting this because I had a few requests for some tutorials. Now here I'm adding some white in around those lines. I might be losing some of the little dark lines that I did earlier, but I'll come back in the end and fill them in. I have to use a very tiny brush for this. I'm not a big fan of that because I do like to slap the paint on thick, but I don't like wasting paint, but I do end up wasting a lot of it, unfortunately. Some more highlights on the other side of the face. So there I'm adding in some, it's like a purple and peach mixture that I'm adding in to where a lot of the shadows I want on his face. There's some right next to his nose. So there I'm coming in to highlight the side of his head a little bit. And at the very end, I'm going to kind of outline most of him in like a lightish blue color to kind of have him stand out more from the background. He already stands out, but I do like my outlines. There's some more purple there. So I did add some blue to the other side of his beak just to kind of imply that there's a shadow. I know, again, in the reference, there isn't very much of a shadow, but in my picture there will be. So there, I'm coming back in again with the dark blue and just kind of fixing any of the lines that got messed up with the white. I'm not very careful when I paint. I just kind of, I end up doing a lot of color correcting and a lot of fixing, especially like at the very end, because just when I'm going through it, I just want to get it done. And maybe that's not a good mindset to have when you're painting, but that's how I think about it. I want it done. I want it ready. I want it pretty. So I just kind of speed through it, and then I'll do any touch-ups towards the end. So there's some purple I added to the right side of his eye, just to kind of show that there's like some depth there. Again, in the picture there isn't really a shadow there, but to me it makes sense, so that's what I'm doing. So there's some more of his little dark spots there. I just love budgies. I love birds. They're so cute and fluffy. They're my absolute favorite thing to paint. There was my little hand there. My brush was stuck together. I'm using a smaller flat brush to kind of fill in his feathers there. Now I'm going to try to get some kind of texture showing on his tummy there. I don't really want to do a lot of painting on the outside of his body at the moment, because I do still have the rest of my background to put in. Now, I think it might be a little smarter to do the background first and then have him on top, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted for the background when I started. I just kind of started. So I'm not very good at planning things sometimes. There I'm using a purple, like a violet and blue mix to kind of add in some more shadow, because we kind of have like a weird light source coming in from the top right area, maybe. There's some more dark blue there. And really, I shouldn't have really done that. I shouldn't have kind of fluffed that left side out because it's going to be covered in a minute. So there's some dark blue in the middle of his belly there. And I'm adding a very gentle shadow from that dark blue that I used on his belly. I'm adding that a little bit to his face just to have a deeper shadow. And for his body, again, it's better to have like a darker base, because then you can just kind of build it up with the lighter colors. So here I'm coming in with a lighter blue on top of that. And even lighter blue. I just kind of keep mixing the blues that I have with like the periwinkle and like the little aqua color that I have, and then white. And then I do like to use a smaller size flat brush for that, because it helps with the feather effect. Now at this point I have decided to just let the blue kind of dry, and I'm coming in with a black to make a base for my background. I like to do my birds in like a little bit of a tropical setting, like they're usually framed with bushes and leaves and flowers and all kinds of randomness. And so I use a black base first, but it's not going to stay that way because unfortunately all the blacks that I have a permanent and then ivory. It's they're very sheer. They're like I don't know, they're very like translucent, and it helps to mix something else with it. Like I'll use like a dark green and red color, or I'll use a dark blue, and it looks pretty much black. So here I'm just kind of filling in the shape of how I want everything in the background. I'm leaving a tiny bit of space for where I know his feet are going to be, just so I don't forget. And it helps to leave more space. Like I wasn't too careful here. I just kind of left tiny little white blobs from the canvas. Because when I go to add in the feet, if that paint around it is still wet, I'm going to get really gray, dark feet. And I want them like purple or pink, you know, so it's better to leave more space there. Because you can always go around and outline the feet with black or blue or whatever it is. So there I'm coming in with a green and red mixture that I haven't really mixed. I just have both colors on the brush, and I just come in and I mix them together on the black part of the canvas that I put on. And see, it's helping it kind of be less translucent. Yeah, I've noticed with a lot of acrylic black paints that you have to do several layers. With the cheap ones that I use anyway, that seems to be the case. I'm sure it's not all of them. It's just the ones that I get. They always end up so sheer. So I guess I'm trying to let that dry. I forget what happened at this point. Okay, so I'm adding in kind of where I want the little vines and leaves to be, and I'm using a dark blue for this. And I decided on dark blue because the background is so orange. I figure that'll kind of look more interesting. And here I'm running into a problem. So, like I said, well, I can't remember if I said it or not, I do live in the desert. So unfortunately, all of my paints dry so fast. And it doesn't help that since it's hot here, we have the fan on and the AC on all the time. So it dries out my paints even quicker. So I have to wet my brush constantly, or else I get this dry brush effect and I get clumping paint. And in some cases it works, but right now I really don't need that to be happening, but it is. So there I'm adding in some of the blue towards the bottom of the canvas because it brings kind of like an interesting highlight to what I've already done underneath. See, I'm not a fan of that dry brush effect there because that's not really what I was going for, but that's just what keeps happening. So here I'm trying to come in with a light blue to make it look like his feathers, like to make it look like he's in front of the background. So because I lost a lot of detail around his body when I put that black in. So now I have to come back, and so what I'm doing is I'm wiping that blue on, and then I'm wiping my brush, and then I get more blue, and then I swipe it on there, and then I wipe my brush again. Because when I swipe over that black part, I get some of the black on the brush. So when I come in to his feathers again with that brush, I'm going to add the black into his feathers, and I don't want to do that because I don't want him to be gray. So I have to clean my brush every single time. So I think in this case here, I think I get a little impatient and I get it mixed in there anyway, and then I have to go in and correct it. All right, there it is. See how that black went into his feathers? I mean, for the bottom of him there, it's not so bad because there is kind of a shadow there that's supposed to be there, so it's okay, but it's not ideal. It's not what I was going for, but you know. And there ended up being some really heavy texture below him from where I put in all those dark colors. And it was giving me a hard time getting really gentle swipes to kind of show feathers. So I was struggling there for a minute. I think what I ended up doing is after everything was dry towards the end, I used a really tiny brush to come in with light blue, and I added the little feathers sticking out there. So that is the tiny brush that I'm using. It is stained yellow. There isn't actually yellow on there. Yeah, so there I am adding in the little swipes to show tiny feathers sticking out. And since I put that light blue down there, I do have to come back over and kind of blend that in into the dark blue, just so I don't lose that shadow there, kind of. There's some more fluff there. So here I'm coming back in around the white feathers and kind of making sure that there isn't canvas showing, and making sure that I kind of have it blended correctly. I did put a shadow under his beak, under his mouth there, even though there really isn't one, but I have to still make sure that the white feathers aren't just separate. They have to be kind of, so it's all painted. I don't like to leave any of the canvas showing. So there I'm adding in some more purple, because I think I did end up losing some shadow from all of the highlighting that I did. Yeah, it's a dark blue and purple mixture there. And this video ended up being a lot longer than what I had hoped for. I've done videos of like sketches and things like that before, but not a full painting. So I guess it makes sense that it's so long, but still, I wasn't really expecting to make it so long. And hopefully I'm explaining everything okay. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to comment. I'll reply. So there I'm starting on the feet. I used a peach and purple mixture to kind of start sketching them in with the paint. I'm not going to be exact, just because he is going to be sitting in a different place than where he is in the photo. So I figure I'll just, I don't like to have everything perfectly detailed or specific like in the reference, just to kind of mix it up, make it my own, unless I'm being requested to have it completely detailed and realistic looking, then I will try. But in this case, I'm just kind of trying to have fun with it and making it simple. So here I'm coming in with the black, and I'm kind of carving out the mistakes that I made, because when I put in his feet, I think I did them a little bit too thick in some places. And that's why it also helps to have a darker background like that, because you can always come in with black and just cut in. So here I'm coming in with a peach. I think it's just peach, and I just added a little bit of highlights to his feet, and I like to do it in little dots, or like little swipes, because they do have scales on their feet, and that kind of gives the impression that they're scaly, or they're not smooth, So there I kind of made some highlights for where the claws are going to be, but I think they're a little too thick, so I'm going to fix that here in a second. So here I'm coming in with kind of like It's almost like a purple, but it came out a little bit darker. It's just a dark red and dark blue mixture, and I'm adding that in kind of as a shadow to his feet and in between his toes. And there I'm adding it kind of towards the top of his leg there. I did it too dark, so I have to come back in and with like a lighter color and fix that a little bit. So here I am coming in with a very light blue, like almost a periwinkle color. I think it's one of my favorite colors to use, especially for shadows, because that foot is kind of in the shadow more so than the right one. So I'm adding some light blue towards like the bottom of the toes there. And there I'm using some red to kind of outline. I think it's like a violet and red mixture there. Just want to make sure that it's properly shaded. And again, it's not going to look completely like the reference. But I'm just kind of trying to go in and make sure the shadows make sense, you know? Even if there's like light sources that are coming from all over the place, I still kind of try to make it make sense. So there I added in the little black lines as to where his wing is, and then some light blue there, and then some white on top of the light blue. Just a little bit, just little specks. So there I'm coming in with some very light blue, and I'm kind of outlining the fluff that I put on him earlier, just to kind of make it stand out. It might not be the most realistic thing, but it looks cool. So there's some little accents in dark blue, and then I'm coming in with a light purple, and I'm kind of outlining the white feathers on his face there under his chin, kind of, again, just to make sure that there's no canvas showing and that it's like it looks legit. I don't know how to explain it. And there I'm coming in with some white again to outline. So there I'm coming with some light purple there to separate his little nostrils. There I'm using a kind of medium-sized pointed brush, and I'm gonna just start filling in my background while everything else is kind of drying. I'm using a violet here, and I'm just adding leaves and vines and all kinds of random things just to make it look interesting, like he's in a tropical place. I like to do all my pet portraits like this. Sometimes it's cool to have a completely black background and then have all of the little vines and shrubbery around the animal in like blue and green and red and everything. That looks kind of cool too. I was thinking about that, but I wanted him in the sunset. So there I like to put I like to make sure that the vines look like they're coming out from like under his feet, and I like them kind of curved to make it look like his weight is on them. And here I'm coming in with a dark red, and I'm just kind of adding a little bit to some of the purple, just giving it lots of color, making it look pretty. I just pick whatever I think would look right. You can't really go wrong here. I use a lot of different colors here, so it's hard to mess up. There's a dark green. It looks almost blue in the video, but it is a dark green that I'm adding in. And again, I'm struggling with that dry brushing that's happening. Let's see if I can fix that here. And really, it is just paint, so if you do mess up, you just paint over it. You know, it's never a big deal when you're painting. Even if you add too many layers to something and it ends up being very thick and it's hard to paint over, you can always scrape it off, you can always sand it down and just paint over. When I use a color in my backgrounds like this, like in the shrubbery, I make sure to add the same color in all different places all the way around, just to make sure it looks balanced. And it's kind of cool when it's still wet and I add new colors because they blend in and they kind of carry some of the color next to it, and it creates like an interesting effect, kind of like it's all one plant that's different colors almost. So here I'm coming in with a light green and turquoise mixture, and I didn't even, well, sort of mixture. I didn't even really mix them. I just kind of picked up both colors on my brush, and as I'm swiping them on, it's picking up some of the purple behind it, and it's kind of mixing in, and it looks kind of interesting, like gives depth to the leaves. I think I lost some of my green there. It was too much purple, so I have to go back in. I'm not very good at painting flowers or leaves. I can, it just takes a lot of patience that I don't normally have. I'd rather be painting birds. So if someone requested a flower or something like that, I would. But in this case, I'm not. I'm just doing them very simple. In all of my paintings, I do like to include a lot of little flowers, unless it's requested that I don't. Some people don't like it. But whenever I do my own stuff, I like to do a lot of little white flowers, almost like kind of like a baby breath, kind of, but it's not really what it is. It's just a bunch of little white flowers with lots of white little specks all around. Maybe petals, maybe they're little tiny flowers that haven't opened up yet. I don't know. And I like to add them in all over. Sometimes I'll even put them like on the bird's head or somewhere around there. And because this is a sunset theme, it would have been kind of cool to do light blue ones instead, and I think I end up going in with a sort of medium color blue and add in some flowers in that color, but I think I just decided with the white here. Yeah, there it is. There's the blue. And I'm just doing a little bit of flowery specks here and there. And it's just random placement. It isn't anything specific, just wherever it would look right. And again, you don't have to do this part if you don't want to. That's just what I like to do. So here I'm using a iridescent greenish color, and then I'm going to use the fluorescent red. I do like to use a lot of shimmer and fluorescent colors in my paintings. It makes it fun. So I'm just coming in and adding a little tiny bit of green vine accents here and there, just to kind of give it a little bit more shimmer. looking back, I'm not sure if it was a good idea because you can't really tell in the end because all of it is covered in glitter, and I'll explain that. But in a picture maybe where there isn't so much glitter, that would be kind of cool to leave. Yeah, I'm just kind of putting them in random places. And with my fluorescent colors, it's kind of interesting to see them under black light because it's like you could see all the little accents glowing. And normally with my fluorescents, I just like to do little hearts all over the place. Sometimes I'll kind of put 3 or 4 together, kind of like a flower. But in this case, I'm just doing little hearts. Maybe in a future video, I will kind of show how I do some of my very easy flowers where they're kind of all rainbow colors. I just layer different colors onto a brush and just kind of make little hearts with them. But in this case, I'm just using a tiny brush and just globbing on a bunch of fluorescent red. Yeah, I was originally, I was trained in oil paints, but I am too impatient to wait for all of that to dry. So I switched to acrylics, and I get impatient with it too sometimes, but it does dry a lot faster. So it allows me to do a lot of texture faster. Because I do like to work with texture. I feel like it looks like it's painted, but it also almost looks like it's like effortlessly the texture that it's supposed to be. You know, I don't know how to explain it very well. So there is a pouring medium acrylic that is like an orangey shimmer, and then just a regular, very translucent yellow acrylic that I have. And I mix them together, and I tried to put them in kind of like some subtle vines in the background. Usually I would do this with like a gold shimmer, but I've been wanting to try that pouring medium, which I am not using for pouring. I don't know why I bought it. I think I just bought it because it looked pretty. So I've been meaning to do something with it. So this is me trying to do something with it. And I'm not sure if it worked out how I like, but it doesn't look too bad. It's definitely not as sparkly as I would want it. Usually I would go in with like a gold shimmer ink and do this in the background. Just because it looks kind of, I don't know, it looks interesting. I like a lot of sparkle. And I realized I didn't really use any yellow in this painting, so I thought, okay, maybe that would help balance it somehow. So that's why I mixed that yellow with that orange. Just lots of little dots. And then I'm coming back in with that fluorescent, and I'm just kind of adding like a highlight almost to the beak. And then, so what I noticed is he looks too white. He looks almost like he is not in his environment. So what I end up doing is coming in with like an orangey yellow wash, and then I add some fluorescent red to that, and I kind of go over his face and his chest and his feet. You'll see in a minute here. And it kind of puts him in that environment that he's in. So here I'm just kind of finishing up with all like the little last minute details and everything. If I notice at the end something needs a shadow, I'll add a little purple. Okay, so there's the yellow wash. Now I have to make sure that it's like I'm using translucent colors and they're very wet and they're very light, because if I glob it on there, I'm going to have to go back in and fix that. So I'm making sure that it's dry first, and then I go over everything with that color. Because he does have a lot of white in his face, he is going to be reflecting some of the light. Like if you have something white in a sunset, or like, you know, like in a pink sunset, it's going to be kind of pink shaded. I'm just trying to make it make sense. That's all. That's all. So there I added some fluorescent red also. So his face might be glowing under black light, but oh well. Just a little bit to his feathers because we do want to keep him blue. And some red to his feet. And really, you can use most any brush for this if you're careful. I like to think you can use one brush for the whole thing if you're patient enough, but I do have several, so I try to use what makes the most sense. Here I am coming in again with some more white highlights for the nose, making sure I don't lose his nostril, and make sure to go back and fill in anything that I might have lost on accident. Accidents happen all the time. And here I am remembering that, oh, I need to put a shadow around his beak because it looked like it was blending in too much with the white. It helps towards the end of your painting to go back in and just make sure everything makes sense. Like, don't even look at the reference, just look at your painting and make sure that there's nothing weird looking, you know. So there's a light blue outline just to kind of highlight him a little bit. Or make him stand out from the background anyway. So there he is. Oh, I'm going to do my signature here at the bottom. Sometimes I'll do it in Sharpie, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I'll do it in like a neon pen. So after this, I have moved to the guest room. Now, unfortunately, somehow this video got cut short. I'm not sure how, but I'm going to explain what I did. So you're going to see for like a minute here that I'm adding like a glitter glue. I do like to add a lot of shimmer to my paintings. So I start off by using just like a pre-mixed glitter glue that has like confetti bits in it. And I just kind of put it in random places all over the background. Sometimes if my birdies are wearing a hat or have a flower or something fancy, I'll put it on them as well. So then, let's see, I'm going to come in with a different glitter glue that is really shimmery, but it's also very wet. And I like using this one because it takes longer to dry than the thicker one that I used first. And I will use a loose glitter and sprinkle it on top of those places. And I just sprinkle it all over the canvas. This is how I like to do like personal pieces, and I've been trying to do some for commissions, and so far people have been liking them. Sometimes I will add confetti pieces all the way around. I'll get like a confetti mix bag from Walmart for a couple dollars, and I'll just put in a bunch of like random pieces of confetti, or like I'll use rhinestones a lot too. That is my favorite glitter to use. It's a beautiful holographic gold. I have a silver somewhere, but I have no idea where it is. So there I am, sprinkling it in like Salt Bay, but Glitter Bay, right? It's okay, you can cringe. So I'm just sprinkling it in. It's gonna end up all over the canvas, and I intend to do that. If you don't want it all over the canvas, you can just be more careful, I guess, or brush it off with like a really dry brush. Oh, I thought this part of the video cut out. My bad. I thought, never mind. When I was looking at this earlier, I didn't see this part. So then I go in with this sealant and I just spray it all down, and all the glitter stays in place. And I don't know, I think it turns out really pretty, really glossy. I have a matte sealant that I like to use as well, but in this case I wanted to use gloss just to make it extra shiny and extra glossy. Most of my supplies I get either from Hobby Lobby or from Walmart. I am very cheap. So there it is. It's very glossy, and it's in this shot it was still drying. It was kind of wet. There it is. I think it turned out pretty cute. Oh, and here's a face reveal. Here's a face reveal. That's me. Hi, everybody. How you doing? There I am. I'm the painting pigeon. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you guys have a good day.